You are in tune to radio station KUCB. This is another live video that we are doing right here, and this is coming to you once again from radio station KUCB. Let us first give you a little background information about radio station KUCB, before we proceed on. Radio station KUCB was a low-powered education 10-watt radio station that we had here in Des Moines, Iowa for about 20 years. The founders were Miss Joanne Cheatham, brother Charles Knox. I had the privilege of working with Sister Holly Marion. We did a show called International Found Call Hour on Saturday. We hosted a weekly show called the African Liberation Hour, where we talked about various issues. And also on International Found Call Hour, we had the pleasure and honor of interviewing so many people. We interviewed Ramona Africa after the MOVE organization was bombed in Philadelphia in 1985. We interviewed Ramona Africa, one of the survivors. We interviewed the widow of Fred Hampton in Chicago, two Black Panther Party members that was murdered in a pre-dawn raid by the Chicago Police Department. We interviewed Fred Hampton, wife. Interviewed her. So we had a chance to do so many shows. Radio station KUCB was on the air for 24 hours, non-stop. About 65 volunteers, had some wonderful volunteers. And most recently, we had one of our DJs that passed away, Dr. Dre. Dr. Dre was one of the original DJs at radio station KUCB, did some tremendous programming. He used to be had organized a downtown teen program where he brought teenagers together. This is when they had a downtown teen program going on back in the day. Dr. Dre was a big part of that. He was doing the groundwork and working with youth and young people back in the day when nobody else really was doing it at that particular time. So Dr. Dre was, who just recently passed, one of the DJs. We had an extensive training program at radio station KUCB for young people. Once they completed the training program, where they got a chance to do news, make up public service announcements, all those things, they got a chance to host their own show on radio station KUCB, so we were proud of that. Just wanted to give you a history. My topic today is the murder of black men, and the unsolved murder of black men that have taken place at this particular time as we speak. Michael Brown, who was murdered in Ferguson, Missouri, some time ago. And as a result of that, there has been if my notes serve me right, there's been 6 black men who was tied to the Ferguson protests, the Ferguson movement, who has mysteriously came up murdered in St. Louis, Missouri. 6 black men since that time in St. Louis, Missouri. And so each case is unusual situation, circumstances. One mother in St. Louis said that she found her son hanging from a tree in her backyard. And this sister was involved in the Ferguson movement. And so, once again, we're saying that in Ferguson, Missouri, there has been at least 6 black men who was involved in the Michael Brown's murder protests, Ferguson movement, have been murdered. And we really haven't heard that much about it. You really don't hear them talking about it much. I think BET maybe did an episode, maybe a series of that. But other than that, not that much. Also, I want to report too that May 9th, it was reported by CBS News that a black man was found hanging from a tree in Claiborne County, Mississippi. A black man, May 9th, was reported found hanging from a tree in Claiborne County, Mississippi. So, these things are remnant of what happened back in 1930, 1940, 1950, 1960 in this country, where you had black men who were being lynched, black men who were being murdered, because of their involvement, because of them refusing to not just refusing to stand up, and protest. And this show, and what my point in discussing this, we're talking about injustice. That's my point in this whole discussion. The injustice that we saw then, and injustice that we are still seeing today, that's still being carried out in 2019. And so we have to constantly remind people and talk about the importance of justice, having justice, not injustice, but having justice. And so what we decided to speak up on in this short presentation at this time is talk about injustice. Once again, we have had a number of reports, have heard and saw and read a number of reports where around the country, black men are being lynched and hung just like they was lynched and hung during the 1950s, during the 1960s, during the 1930s and 40s, 1920s. Here we are in today's time. This kind of injustice is still prevalent, still going on. And so, and we see so many cases where it's not getting the national news, it's not getting national headlines, but these kind of things are still happening. Once again, I repeat myself, in St. Louis, Missouri, it's been reported that 6 black men were found murdered in different situations, different circumstances in St. Louis, Missouri. The other part that we found out too about these 6 black men that's been murdered, they were tied with the Ferguson protest, the whole Ferguson movement. They were real activists. Just say they were black men that were social activists in the Ferguson movement and protest. And so there's a link between these brothers being murdered and being involved in the Ferguson uprising protests. Oftentimes, just like we saw during the whole civil rights era, where you had black men who were lynched, and oftentimes that's done, and the message is to send to the rest as a fear tactic that this is what happens to you, or this is what will happen to you when you get involved in the movement, you get involved in the protest, you get involved in fighting for against injustice. And so there always has to be people who we believe, and we say in Islam, there always is important to have a group of people who stand against wrong. Injustice is wrongdoing. It's wrong. There's nothing just about injustice. So it's always good to have a group of people who stand against injustice in the society and try to promote the justice. On the one hand, you have to have people who are against wrongdoing, who are against injustice. It's important to have that. And at the same time, it's important to have people who stand for justice, because if not, then you will have a situation where the society would just fall to pieces or fall into chaos if you don't have some people who promote, stand up for what is right, what is good, be against what is wrong, be against injustice. It's important to have that in a society. And it doesn't make any difference if the people are Muslim, non-Muslim, the color, none of that makes any difference. I'm saying it's important to have a group of people who are strongly against injustice and speak out and demonstrate and protest and march and whatever else. And it's also extremely important to have a group of people that's for justice, for the right, for what is right. Be against what is wrong, but promote what is right. It's important to have that in a society, in a community, in a town, in the city. And so in today's time, we see so many of the episodes of what we saw happen in 1920, 1910, 1930, 1940, where black men were actually being lynched. We see a repeat of that today. History is repeating that part of it today's time, like what we saw in 1920, where black men was actually being lynched. And you know what, they would what they would do on some occasions, you see old clips now where they would have a public announcement that this black man was going to be lynched at a certain time, certain day, and they would come out, the people would come out as if it was a picnic and to actually watch the lynching. Sometimes they would torture the person by lynching him, not only lynching but then throwing gasoline on his body and setting it on fire. This would occur. And so even though that was, people may say, well, that was then. Okay, yes, you're absolutely right, that was then. But in today's time, 2019, we are still getting reports, we're still seeing situations and circumstances where in today's time, in 2019, in society, black men are still being lynched. There's been, I don't know how many occasions, reports where I've saw where black men have been lynched and being found hanging from a tree, hanging from a semi truck. One brother I saw, a brother in some parts of, might have been out towards Las Vegas in that area. He was found hung in a truck. His truck, he had been hung in his own truck. And so we see this kind of stuff happening too. And let me also add too, along with that, we also are getting reports where black boys end up missing. We're seeing this happen. Back in East Columbus, a 9-year-old missing black boy have occurred. And we're seeing this where not only are black men being lynched, and we're also seeing occasion, we're seeing where black boys are coming up missing, across the country. We're seeing this. And so we're saying that all of this could involve hate crimes. It could involve just a number of things. But this is something that we should be concerned about. We should, alhamdulillah, we should be concerned about it. We ought to be trying to do everything that we know something, having the information, have seen something. Maybe it may be something that we might not think that was important. We might have seen something, we might have heard something, we might have witnessed something. And that very thing that we think may not be important or may not have been important, it may very well be important. So it's important for us to be vigilant. It's important for us to be aware. And I want to do this video because we've been doing we did a number of videos on black men being murdered and black boys missing. So we kind of couple this two together because there's not a big difference. And so we had, back in the 80s, we had this whole scenario where so many black boys came up murdered in Atlanta, Georgia. The Atlanta child murders. That was the whole city of Atlanta was just like terrified, So here we are again in 2019, and we see where black men are being hung and lynched, found hanging from trees, all across the country, different places, different locations. And oftentimes what we hear too in these situations, that they are saying, in some of these cases, they're trying to convince people and trying to convince us that these men actually hung themselves. They committed suicide. So this is the thing that we begin to hear too. And like I say, in the case with these 6 brothers in St. Louis, Missouri, we know for a fact that so many of these young brothers were tied into the Ferguson movement, the Ferguson protest, where they actually murdered Michael Brown. We know that was simply injustice, wrongdoing. We know it was murder. And that's what we call it. Michael Brown got murdered by these police officers in St. Louis, Missouri. And so these young black men who was involved and real active in this Ferguson movement, 6 of them end up being murdered, end up losing their lives, dying, and finding their bodies under mysterious circumstances, situations. And so we just wanted to just let you know about this. Inshallah, if it's Allah's will, we can try to continue to bring you an update. And as we get more information about this, we'll let you know, inshallah. And also any reoccurrence of black boys that are missing, we'll continue to bring that to you, because we see in the day and the time that we're living in, where I'm not saying other kids and other races of people are not missing, but what we are seeing is, it looks like a large proportion of black women, black girls, black men, black boys are coming up missing all across the country. And this could all very well be related to hate crimes. We call it injustice because that's what this is. It's injustice. Seem like directly at a segment of the population, a group, a race of people in the population. And so we can't remiss this as not being hate crimes. We can't remiss that as not being that. The other part of what I want to add to this too is that the body parts in cases where black men, black boys, black girls, black women, their bodies once they are dead, there's a large quantity of money and profit that is to be made from body parts on the black market. So that's another factor that goes into this. You think about when you think about the large number of black men who have been murdered in this country, and I'm talking about through hate crimes. When you think about the large number of black women who have been murdered through hate crimes, and think about the body parts, that could be sold from this large quantity of people being murdered. Because once a person is found deceased, then the family has no more connection with the body. And this is why we have been trying to, inshallah, encourage people, when you do the driver license piece and they ask you about donating your body for organ donation, you should put it down to give it to a family member or somebody specific. Because if you just leave it open, or you leave it down with nothing, then that kind of gives them the free will to do whatever they want to do with your body part. And there's a national network that they go into searching for specific things they need from body parts. And with as many, I'll say it again, with as many black women who have been found murdered, black girls, black men, and black boys, then that's a large quantity of body parts, for the black market, and just for in general, that's a large quantity of body parts. So we wanted to just bring you this short video. Once again, radio station KUCB. Remember, our motto is truth is the wealth of freedom, and we communicate to educate and organize. I'm your host, Brother Jamal.